I made a game in 48 hours for the GMTK Game Jam. I have made several games for Ludum Dare events. I have also participated in 7-day roguelike jams, where I made a roguelike game in a week. The last Ludum Dare event did not go so well. I worked on one game and didn't like it, worked on another game and didn't like it. I went back to the first one and then back to the second one. I almost quit, but I ended up making a train game in about 13 hours. It was not very good, and only 5 people played it. The theme for this jam was roles reversed. I started writing some ideas. I first thought of being the enemy, or having powers that would do the opposite. I watched the GMTK theme video announcement again, and used the examples to help clarify the theme. I decided to make a game where the player makes the open world for an open world game. The player would add land, monsters, and NPCs, then watch heroes explore the open world. I made this game in Unity and started with some basic sprites. I used Unity tile maps to create different sections of the map. I wrote a script for the map data and room data. I created a map controller that would be the main script for handling anything relating to the map. I wrote a function that would detect where the mouse was clicked and would spawn a room from a prefab. But the game seemed to run slow, maybe because each prefab had its own tile map? So I started over. I decided to make it a card game. I took some inspirations from Stacklands. Now you would play a card, and that card would be part of the map. Since I've made card games before for jams, it was easy to set up scripts for card data and a card manager that would handle drawing and playing cards. It uses 3 lists, one for the deck, one for the hand, and one for the discard pile. Of course, in the end, the game only really uses the hand list. I made another script that would store all the card data instead of using scriptable objects. I find it easier for a game jam to have all the data in one location. It makes it quicker to make changes and add more content. I set up a basic card UI object and wrote a function for the starting hand of cards. So far, everything was going well. I wrote a map controller script again and included the function of adding map cards to the map. Now it's time to add the hero. For starters, I would just make a simple AI. When the player plays a land card, their hero will mark that card as unexplored. Their hero will first try to move to an unexplored land that is adjacent. If there are no unexplored lands, the hero will randomly move to another adjacent land card. And that was the end of day 1. I started day 2 by including enemies. The player has enemy cards and plays those cards on certain land cards. Enemies do not move on the map and will respawn when the player defeats the enemy. I also gave stats for the hero and enemy such as health, attack, dodge, and armor. I made another list of things I needed to do. I had several ideas, but I knew some would eventually be cut. I have a problem with making these types of games. I always want to add too much. Next, I added item cards for weapons and armor. The player would play an item card on a land card that has an enemy. If a hero defeats the enemy with an item, the hero would receive the item. I also added hunger to the hero, and the hero could go to land cards to gather food. I added dungeon cards that are unique land cards. They can only have a boss card. A boss card could only be played on a dungeon card. I added a point system. Each time a hero performed an action such as exploring, fighting, gathering, or resting at a town or a camp, the player would earn points. The player also gains points when a hero levels up. The player could then use those points to buy a pack of cards. The packs would randomly give the player new cards. I finally started working on the AI. I created a needs system. A hero would have needs for resting, hunger, fighting, exploring, and shopping. Yes, the hero can shop at the town and spend gold that the hero earned when defeating enemies. The hero would randomly pick a need from the 2 highest needs and move to a card that has that need. I used A-star pathfinding for the hero to move to a card. Every time a hero moves to a card, it has a wait timer before performing that action. This part of the programming didn't work as well as I hoped. The hero would sometimes not perform the action of the card and move on to the next card. I added the function to add more heroes. I had to change some of the code to make this work. Fortunately, it was easy to implement. It was almost midnight and the game jam would end the next day at 1 p.m. Although I had a functioning game, I had no art, no sound, and no UI. It was pretty late, so I did what any rational person would do. I stayed up all night finishing the game. I began working on the art. I started with the land cards because I figured those would be the easiest. I went with a very simple graphic style. I made grasslands, hills, forests, mountains, beaches, graveyards, towns, and camps. I also drew the dungeon card. I imported everything into Unity. I also added more packs. I did create scriptable objects for the data of each pack. I then worked on the hero and all the animations. I feel like this was the best part of the game. I made animations for idle, attacking, gathering, gaining hit, leveling up, and dying. Some of the animations were not used. For example, I programmed the hero to walk around the card when waiting to perform an action, so you never see the hero in an idle state. This is what the game looked like with the hero animations. I then added an icon for the food resource, and then Unity crashed. I lost all that work. It actually wasn't much. This has happened to me in other game jams. So I've learned to save often, so I continue working on the art for the items. The artwork wasn't taking too much time, but I was getting really tired at this point. I then worked on the art for the enemies. I still needed to draw the enemies, create the UI, and create the sound. I also wanted to add particles for the attack animations. I also haven't played test the game at all. I spent about an hour on the sound and the UI. Even though I had 5 hours until the submission, I was too tired to continue. I made a build for the game and uploaded the game to itch. I was done. This is my game, Open World. You build a map of the world using cards. Heroes will explore the world that you create. You can add enemies for the heroes to fight, and weapons and armor for them to collect. Heroes will give points for performing actions. Points can then be used to buy more heroes and more cards. I would say I am really happy with this game. Even though I wasn't sure how it would end up, it came out pretty good. Now the game has some bugs. For instance, when buying cards, it checks if the player has enough money. Then it loops through 3 times to give 3 cards, and I accidentally subtracted the amount in the loop. This isn't too terrible since it is really easy to gain points. I did not balance the game at all. There's also no indication of how many points you receive when a hero performs an action. But the game is still enjoyable, even though it is short. I created a world that had more than 500 heroes. There's also no indication of how many points the player receives when a hero performs an action. I did learn that in these game jams, you can't do everything and your game might not be polished. Of course, I do have an idea where I take a different approach for the next game jam. Thanks for watching.